We're going to show you in this video how to pull out the OEM lock assembly and replace it with this aftermarket one. Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Today I have my buddy Alex over here at the Timmy the Toolman Studios. And the reason Alex is here is we are going to fix the door lock on his first generation Toyota Tacoma. Now, if you're familiar with our channel, you'll know that I recently fixed the door lock on my 98 4Runner. My driver's side front door lock wasn't working, and I was able to pull out the lock assembly, crack open the case of the actuator module, and just replace this little RC motor. I thought I could do the same for Alex, but what I didn't realize is that his actuator takes a different motor. It's basically the same size as this, but it has some different electrical connectors that this one that you can readily get on eBay and other sources. It doesn't have the same type of prongs. If you remember, this one just plugs into a couple prongs on the 4Runner actuator, but the Tacoma one has a couple little nubs on the back side, which I'll show you when we crack open the case of his OEM lock assembly. So in the process of messing around with his door lock actuator, I ended up doing some damage to the thing, unfortunately, and I priced a OEM replacement from Toyota, and they are super pricey. They are double the cost of a 4Runner actuator and lock assembly. So spending somewhere in the area of $300 to $400, depending on if you go right up to a brick and mortar dealership or you order online, that option didn't sound all that appealing. So what was my option? Well, China makes some replacement lock assemblies. Is it ideal that we're getting a lock assembly from China? I'll fully agree that this is not ideal, but the options are pretty limited. I tried to find a first gen Toyota Tacoma at a local pick and pull, and they're harder to come by than third generation Toyota 4Runners. And another thing notable about first generation Toyota Tacomas is a lot of people didn't get the option of power door locks. They have manual door locks and they have manual crank windows, non-power windows. The chances of you going to a pick and pull and finding a first gen Tacoma that had electric door locks and you're able to pull this assembly from it is a little bit slimmer than if you were looking for the same assembly for a third generation Toyota 4Runner. We're going to show you in this video how to pull out the OEM lock assembly and replace it with this aftermarket one. If this one fails, well, then we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and see what the best option is from there. What I ultimately like to do is figure out a way that we can make these RC motors that you could readily get from eBay sellers and other suppliers work for a first gen Tacoma actuator. So stay tuned for a future video of where hopefully I figure out a way to make these motors work for a first gen Tacoma door lock actuator. With all that said, let's get out to the truck and let's get started on this job. All right, so the door lock that Alex was having a problem with is his driver's side front. This is pretty similar to the third generation Toyota 4Runner with a couple small differences that I'll show you. The first thing I'm going to remove is this switch mechanism for the windows, for the door locks, and for the side mirror controls. You're going to get right up underneath here with a slim tool. You can do it with a trim removal tool like I have here. It's plastic and it won't scratch up the plastic. Or you could just use a slim blade screwdriver. Get underneath here, lift up. There was a tab right here that pops out. You slide this forward, and then now you can get at the electrical connectors. If I turn this over, you just push this front one in for the mirror control and pull out. This one right here, the tab is right here. You push and then you pull back and you can get this one out. This one for the mirror and the door lock control is a little bit harder to get out but you have to just push the tab and pull back and get this sucker free. There we go, finally. The next thing we're going to remove is this interior door lock handle. There is a Phillips or JIS screw right in there that I have to remove first. And then what you want to do is you want to pull the door handle this way to free it of a couple clips, and then you can pull it out a little bit like so, and then you can see a white clip right here, so I have to free it of the rod, and then I could slide the handle off the rod. So you'll want to use a flat blade screwdriver. You want to get behind the clip and pry towards you. There we go, got it out, and then you just push the rod downward to free it of the handle, just like that, and you can get a shot of what the clip looks like right there. The next thing we're going to remove is two screws that are hidden behind these little covers. On the Prerunner one, if you remember, we had to pull up the armrest to expose two screws, but this one is a little bit different on this first Gen Tacoma. I'm just using a very small flat blade screwdriver to get underneath the lip of the cover and pop it out, just like that. I'll do the same with the other one. And then now I can get in here with a screwdriver to remove the two screws. Okay, that one's loose, and I'm gonna go for this one. Okay, they're both loose, but you'll find that they don't really want to come out, so I'm gonna reach in there with the needle nose pliers and pull the screws out. Just like that. This cover right here that hides the nuts that secure the side mirror to the door are right behind here. This might get in your way a little bit. I'm gonna get behind here with my trim removal tool and just pop it loose. And you'll see the three nuts that I was talking about that hold the side mirror to the door. Now what I have to do is I have to free some clips that hold the interior panel to the door. They're all in this area right here that make a big U shape. On this inside, you can get your hand in here to get it started, but I'm just gonna again use one of my trim removal tools to get behind there and start popping it free. Just be a little bit gentle with this because you don't want to break any of the clips or actually crack the plastic that the clips hold into on this door panel. So pull with a decent amount of force, but don't be super violent with it. Okay, it looks like they're all free. The door panel hooks over the top of the door right here, so you want to lift up and then free it of the door lock here. Just lift it up like this, and then on his truck there's another electrical connector right back here that you can't get free until you get the door panel loose. So you just pull here and get it free. This was a electrical connector for the speaker that is right here. So when you get the door panel off and nobody has molested this door yet, taken the panel off and done some type of repair, you'll find that this membrane, this plastic membrane, is all intact, and it's got this special kind of like butyl rubber that's sticky that holds this plastic membrane in place. What I found on my third gen Prerunner and what I also found on Alex's first gen Tacoma, it was clear somebody did some work in here. His membrane was torn here. It was all like folded up and sloppy in here. So the people that worked on it did a bad job getting it back in place. His rubber sticky stuff is fairly intact, but I might do what I did on my Prerunner, is put a little bit of packing tape in here to make sure it won't fall off in the future. So just know that this might be mangled if somebody worked on it before and didn't do a very clean job. To get to the lock mechanism, you want to peel this membrane back to about here to where you can work in this area. So just be careful peeling it back. You could use a little utility blade and slice the adhesive slowly and carefully to where you can peel it back to where you can work. So this one has been manipulated so much it's going to come free really easy, as you can see. So I'm just going to use a couple pieces of painter's tape to tape this back out of my way. Now we're going to start working on releasing the lock assembly from the door. The first thing that I'm going to tackle is this rod that attaches to the interior door handle. it attaches at the locking mechanism with a clip that is similar style to this clip right here. So I have to get in there with the tool, flip the clip off the rod, and then be able to slide the rod out. To be able to see where you need to get the screwdriver to flip up the clip for this interior door handle rod, there's a plug right here. It's plastic. On the Prerunner, it's just a little plastic label. This one, you could just get in behind, push it out, and get it out of your way. Now, when I look in here, I can see the clip. I can use this as a little window to see what I'm doing. So you see the rod right here. I'm going to come into the door, and then I'm going to come through that access hole, and I'm going to point at the clip. So right there you can see it. It's orange. You have to flip it up towards the sky, and then you could take the rod out. So I'm going to pull the rod towards me a little bit to where I can get access to the clip easier. And I'm going to come in from the bottom. There we go. It popped free. And then now you just have to push the rod away from you and it will slide out. There we go. It's free. There's a single electrical connector for this lock assembly and door actuator. You push on this tab and you could disconnect the electrical connector. Now what we have to do is we got to get a couple more clips free. There's this pink one right here that hooks up to a rod that goes to the cylinder that you put your key in to unlock and lock the door. And then up above, there's another one that's white, and it hooks up to the exterior door handle and goes to the lock assembly. So those two we have to get free next. In order to have easier access to get to that clip for the lock cylinder, I'm going to remove a 10mm nut here, and then I'm going to remove a 10mm bolt here. These hold a window track on this side, so the window slides through that track right here on this edge. And so with those free, I can lift up that track out of the way to where it's easier for me to get to that clip. I'm going to use my Milwaukee ratchet short extension with a 10mm socket. And then this one. Now you're going to see that this thing is loose. I have to push this stud towards the back side here, and then now I can manipulate it pretty far, so you can see how much I can move it. Now that's more out of my way to where I can get to the clip. So using that same access hole that the plastic plug was covering, I'm going to come in through there, and I'm going to have to flip this pink clip to the right. There we go, it's free. And then I can reach my hand in here and just pull it back, and it flopped out. So the lock cylinder rod is free now. Now I have to work on the exterior door handle one. Now the other clip that we have to get free is that door handle rod clip. And from my last experience with this, I learned that it's easier to get the lock assembly completely free of the door, all the fasteners loose. I remove the two bolts that hold the exterior door handle on. I pull that free of the skin of the door, and then I could get my hands onto that rod clip and I can get it free easier. Trying to do it while everything's still connected inside the door is hard with the screwdriver because the mechanism is flexing on you and you can't get enough force to push that rod out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen these three Torx head bolts to free the mechanism right here. They are a number 30 Torx head. When you take out this last one, it's going to drop a little bit, so I'm just going to support it on the inside. So now the only thing that's holding this in place is the rod that's attached to the exterior door handle. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the two 10mm bolts that hold the exterior door handle to the door. You have one 10mm bolt here, and then when you go in through this access hole right here, you'll be able to get onto the other one with a long extension. I'm going to come in with my Milwaukee again with about a 6-inch extension and a 10mm socket. And you might drop them like I did, but it's easy to find them in this door. And that one dropped too. Now getting this exterior door handle free of the skin of the door is a little bit tricky, but you'll figure it out. you'll want to pull it out just a little bit, and then you want to look from the inside to see what's hanging you up. The cylinder lock clip might be hanging you up. There's other parts of it that'll be hanging you up. So utilize what you can see from the inside to know what you need to do to get it free. Okay, I finally got it free, and here's the offending clip right here. So you can see that I just have to push this down, and then with my fingers I could just push on this and hopefully pull it out here. There we go. You'll see that it has this little nub, and this is what makes this one particularly hard to free, because it kind of snaps into the clip with this little nub on the end of the rod. So now the whole lock assembly is free of the door. I'm gonna just unscrew this tab right here for the lock assembly so I can pull the rod through. This plastic sleeve can just pull right straight up, and then you can pull the lock assembly out through this way. I'm gonna get my light out of my way, go down, and here it is. So now let's take this over into the garage and compare it to the replacement one from China. OEM one that we just pulled out, China one. And so when I look at it, it looks like it is the right one. The main difference that I'm seeing is that it did not come with this rod that hooks up to the little door latch that you can pull up or push down. And this little clip right here was free. It wasn't connected, and so I could see that obviously connects here. So I'm going to plug it in right here, and then I'm going to free this one. Maybe I could just get it off with my hand. Yep. And then I could slide this one out, and now I'm going to put it over into the China one here. Slide it in, slide over the clip, and then now it's connected. The actuator module is right here, and the motor sits in this area. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to show you how the motor is different than the one in the third generation Toyota 4Runner, and the reason why I wasn't able to do an easy fix for this first gen Tacoma. To separate the door actuator module, there's screws already removed. 1, 2, 3, 4 on this black case, and then 1, 2 here. And then you flip it over, and then you can pull this mechanism out and then twist it to where you can expose the guts. Like I said, if you're familiar with the video we just made for the third generation Toyota 4Runner, this is totally different. This is the motor. It's very, very similar, but it has a couple electrical connectors that I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull this out. To get this motor out, you could just get underneath here and pry up, and you'll free it. It's a little stuck here on this gear. This gear will come up with it. Okay. And then you're going to see that there's two little posts here. I'll pull these off. And so this is the problem with this motor. It appears that most likely Toyota special ordered these motors like this, with these two little prong electrical connectors. These electrical connectors on the actuator can plug into it. I've tried to source this motor online. A bunch of other guys on Tacoma World have tried to source this motor. Nobody can find it, which supports the idea that Toyota had these specially made. What somebody on Tacoma World said they did is they were able to take one of the motors that you could easily get from multiple sources, and they were able to solder the connectors in the actuator to the motor. I can't really see how easily that could be done. I think what you'd have to do is have to solder a couple little blade connectors that would slide into the motor so you can make one of these work. But when you look at this, you can see it's the same exact size. The only problem is the way they made the electrical connectors for it, and then also this little plastic wheel you have to salvage from the old motor. And from what I heard on Tacoma World, it's kind of a press fit. So you have to get in there with a flat blade screwdriver, use a fair amount of force to force this gear off the shaft. So those are the two major blocks to making this an easy and affordable fix by just replacing the motor on these first gen Tacoma actuators. All right, so now that I got done explaining the problems with doing a simple and affordable fix with these first generation Toyota Tacoma actuators, let's go out to the truck and let's put in this China actuator and hope the damn thing works. So reversing our procedure, I'm gonna come in through here, and the first thing I'm gonna get connected is this rod that hooks up to the exterior door handle. So I'm gonna get this sucker ready in my hand. I'm gonna go in through here. So I'm supporting the rod from the inside of the door. I'm gonna slide this in here like so, snap it in place like that, rotate the clip and capture the rod just like that. Now I got to get the door handle back in here, and again it's going to be a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Have some patience and you'll get it. So it came out this way, the top end last. There, I got that started. The next thing I got to get clear is this back side of this key cylinder. And there it is. I think that's the easiest I've done. When you're doing this, just be careful of your paint. If you have really pristine paint, you want to be careful not to scratch your paint. So now let's go on the inside here. We're going to get the two 10mm bolts back in that hold the door handle to the door. In order to prevent the bolt sliding off the socket, I'm just going to use a little bit of black tape, electrical tape. This is a trick that a lot of people know about. You put it over the end of the socket, and then you force the bolt head into the socket, and this holds it in place. So when you're going in there, you're not going to end up dropping this inside the door. It's going to be really important for this one right here. This one's a little easier. Okay, that one's started. Then I'm going to do the same with this one. You might have to manipulate the door a little bit to where the hole lines up. Okay, they're both started. I'm sure there's a torque spec for this, but it's a small bolt going into plastic. Just don't over tighten it. So I'm just gonna use my little shorty 3/8 ratchet so I get less mechanical advantage. Now I'm just gonna cinch these up snug, and that's good. Now reversing our order, I'm going to get the 3 Torx head bolts connected to where this lock assembly is gonna be firmly attached to the inside. So I have my right hand inside the door supporting the mechanism, lining up the holes here, and I'm gonna get one of the Torx head bolts started. And you get the idea. I'm gonna get all 3 of them started. I've got all 3 Torx head bolts started. Again, I know there's gonna be a torque spec for this, but I'm not worried about it. I'm just gonna cinch them up snug, take them to that German spec of good and tight.
Okay, Herr Good and tight.
Okay, they're all tight. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the rod that hooks up to the lock cylinder in place. You already saw how we got it out, so there's no need to show you how to get it back in, but just know with this window track, the rods for the key lock assembly and for the exterior door handle have to be on this side, closest to the outside of the vehicle, and then the rod that goes to the lock mechanism up here has to go on the inside of the door track. So you just slide the rod back into the plastic clip, the pink one, and then rotate the clip in place. The next thing I'm going to do is get this window track back in. So you have to get the stud back in here. This thing might slide down on you. Slide it back up to get the stud into here. This rod for the little pull handle has to go right in here. You can see a little track for it. So I got the rod for the window track in place, and then again I'm going to make sure that this rod is going in that track I just showed you. I'm going to get this nut started, and then the 10mm bolt down here started, and then this one down here. You might have to reach your hand in here to line it up, but it's easy to do. And I'm going to cinch these up just snug again, no torque spec. Okay, those are cinched up snug. You want to make sure the electrical connector for the actuator, it goes behind the window track. If you put it in front of the window track, you're gonna have the window come down and mess with the wires. So you want to avoid that. So make sure the electrical connector is going behind the window track. So I reconnected the electrical connector. There's a little plastic keeper that will plug in right here to keep the wires being able to flop towards the path of the window. I'm going to now take this plastic sleeve and slide it in over the lock rod here like that. I'm going to now screw in the little pull handle and just screw it in until it's snug, that you can't really turn it easy anymore. And that's bottomed out right there, so just like that. Now before we put the interior door panel back on and get everything put back together, we're going to make sure this thing works. Well, the repair didn't work. It appears that the problem with Alex's door lock actuator isn't the actuator itself, it's a wiring problem. We tested the actuator out, and when we cycled the door locks, the driver's side door doesn't work. It doesn't lock or unlock. And then we were back to the drawing board trying to figure out what the issue is. So I suspected potentially there was a broken wire that leads from the body to the door in that area where the rubber grommet. Same type of situation for the wires that lead from the body to a rear hatch on a 3rd Gen 4Runner. I thought maybe I would see a severed wire in there. I exposed the wires, and I did see a couple wires that had a cracked sheathing, but the wires were intact. The copper wire strands were all intact. They weren't compromised. So we gave up. We put the door panel back together, and I sent them down the road, and I was trying to think what else could it be. So I got them back here on another day. We took the door panel off again, and what I did is I took the door panel off also on the passenger side, and I wanted to figure out which wires that run from the harness that plug into the actuator, which of those wires gets the power when you hit the unlock and the lock. And so I determined that the 2 wires in question were a solid blue wire and a blue wire with a white stripe. So then I took that knowledge and I went over to the driver's side. Using a test light, I had Alex cycle the door locks, locking it and unlocking, and I saw that there was a signal getting through for the locking portion, but when I had him cycle the door locks for the unlock, it wasn't getting any type of signal. The test light wasn't lighting up. So then I thought maybe somewhere in the door panel where the wires run to the actuator and through the whole door, that somehow something got compromised. So I painstakingly unbundled all the wires, exposed everything, and I couldn't find anything. There was nothing wrong with the wiring that leads from the body to the door actuator. So then I got underneath the dashboard and I saw that there was a wiring harness that had tapped into that blue wire and that blue wire with a white stripe. It looks like it was a harness meant for an alarm system that he no longer has installed. I took the wire taps off those 2 wires and I used my test light, and again, by having Alex cycle the door locks, there was a signal happening when he hit the lock function, but when he hit the unlock, there's still not a signal being sent through those wires. So what the problem is, I have no clue. It's basically above my pay grade because I'm not an expert in auto electrical. Maybe something happened with the ECU, who knows, but I'm not going to sit there and tear apart his whole truck tracing those wires to see what exactly happened. So I basically threw in the towel on this one. We decided to keep this video because it would still help somebody out that does have a failed door actuator and they need a good tutorial on how to tear apart the door panel, get the door lock actuator out and another one in. So that's why, even though this was a failure on our end to fix Alex's problem, it can help somebody out that has a true door actuator failure that just needs to swap it out and then get all the door locks working again on their 1st Gen Tacoma. With all that said, we thank you for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean and special guest Alex. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Happy wrenching. Peace out.